Well, again, another week's analysis behind the news. We've talked a lot about Benghazi a little bit, the Ukraine and that sort of thing. And I'm going to continue along that vein, but expand on it so that you get a fuller understanding of what's going on all over the world, particularly in the Western world. You know, one of the things that we see here in our research department at the John Birch Society is things that you don't normally see in your newspapers because you don't go beyond that. You have the capability of going beyond that through the internet, but there's really no reason for you. You don't think about doing it to do your own research into certain things. But let me show you and then segue into a major part of this week's broadcast. And that is, this is a picture in the Ukraine of pro-Russian Ukrainians demonstrating with the Russian flag, the new one, and, if you can see this, the hammer and sickle. That's what this is right here. Now, those are the pro-Russians. Now, you would think that, okay, we get it. The Russians probably are communists, and they're all led by supposedly ex-communists and everything else. You'd see the hammer and sickle. This is a picture of pro-Ukrainian troops marching. You'll notice that this is the Ukrainian flag, this is the hammer and sickle. So both sides in the Ukrainian fight, so-called fight, fly the hammer and sickle. Now that's an indication of what may be going on, because what you see is that Ukrainian leaders are all ex-communists. They've been controlled by Russia all along. It's an invisible empire, if you will, amongst the old USSR. I invite all of you, if you can, this is out of print, as far as I know it is. It's New Lies for Old by Anatoliy Golitsyn. Down up on the cover here it says, an ex-KGB officer warns how communist deception threatens survival of the West. And this is copyright 1984. You can probably go to eBay or Amazon or something and find used copies of this. Keep in mind, 1984. In here, he talks about the planning, because he was part of the planning committee of the KGB as to how they were going to make it look like communism collapsed, that the danger from the communist empire was over. He said this in here, that they probably will tear down the Berlin Wall, and then what they will do is install in areas like Poland and Hungary and Czechoslovakia, etc., the second and third tier communist leaders. That the American people, the American public, have no idea of who these personalities are because they read about the big shot in those countries, the big communist leader. That's who they see and hear in their newspaper, on their radio, on TV, that sort of thing. They'll take those individuals out, and then they'll put in their second tier or third tier if necessary, to where the American public won't be aware that these are still communist leaders. They'll call themselves Democrats, just like they do in Brazil with Rousseff, for instance, who's the president of Brazil, a communist terrorist leader. How about Merkel, the chancellor of Germany, who was a former communist leader in her early adult life. And so now these are conservatives or Democrats or whatever, but they're all ex-communists in these countries that are controlled by the communists. Brazil, that's another story. They've taken it over. They just haven't told you about it yet, along with other Latin American countries. But the point is this, is that whether it's the Ukraine or any of these other countries, these countries are still run by the Communist Party. And that is the invisible empire that controls these countries. They haven't made it legal by reuniting it in a USSR or something of that nature. But it's all controlled. All of this is show business so that we send them money, so that the Rubios of the world will talk about some sort of a scheme, along with others, that we need to stabilize the Ukraine by sending them billions because they owe so much money, and we've got to help the Ukraine stand up against Russia, so let's send them a lot of American taxpayers' money. The money they owe is to Putin, to Russia. So in the name of fighting Russia, we're going to help out the Ukraine so they can send money to Russia. I mean, when you start to look at the total picture of what's going on here, it is really very interesting. So this book is a must-read. Now you'll see that not everything that he predicted came true, but the overall scheme, and a great deal of it did. And this was done, after he left the KGB and defected to the United States. So they probably changed their plans a little bit between the time he was involved in it and when he exposed it. And subsequently, even after he exposed it, there were probably tweaks and changes of direction here and there, but the overall strategy remained in place. New Lies for Old, very interesting book. And when you read it, think in terms of how it must have appeared to a lot of people in 1984. For those of us, before the wall came down and all the rest of this happened, that was still 5-6 years away. And for those of us in the John Birch Society, we took this book seriously. We all read it. And it made a lot of sense as to what was going on and what they had in the future. One of the things that Khrushchev, who was the man that was in the Kremlin in Putin's place when John F. Kennedy was in the White House, he came to the United States and made a show of himself at the United Nations. He said something that was very interesting. He says, "We spit in your face and you call it dew." And that's literally what this guy Putin is doing today. He's spitting in our face and we're calling it dew. I saw him, I was on an airplane early this morning returning to Appleton. And I noticed that one of the, everybody can get their own channel now on the airplane. So I noticed that the fellow sitting next to me was watching a TV station, and it was an American station, but I couldn't really see what it was. They had Putin on live for the whole flight at some economic conference. And he was answering questions, everything about economics, Ukraine, Snowden, and all of it, and everybody was just sitting there in awe. Out of the whole audience, nobody stood up and said, "You're a bum and a liar. You're a dictator." It would have been interesting if somebody had said that about Hitler when he first started going too. I can tell you I have a lot of stuff from antique stores that I've gotten over the years where publications in the United States lauded Hitler when he first came to power. Did it in England too. Much to the chagrin of everybody later on to discover that this guy was as bad as some people were saying. Putin is as bad as some people are saying. And it's not him only. It's the Chinese. It's even the communists in our own government. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know that there are communists in our own government, then you haven't been watching what's been going on. You might not be able to identify the specific individual, but you can see the program of the Communist Party, if you read Communist Party literature and books over the years, is coming to fruition in our own government. At any rate, this is all orchestrated everywhere from Libya all the way over to the Ukraine. Very well orchestrated. By the way, we have had some eyewitness accounts out of Libya that have told us that the so-called no-fly zone that Obama established over Libya really was a bombing zone, not a no-fly zone. That NATO bombers and everything else were involved in bombing civilians and so on and so forth, setting the stage for Al-Qaeda to come in and take over Libya, which has subsequently happened. There are things about the Benghazi affair that we still don't want to talk about on camera simply because we can't back it up. We can't prove it yet. But some very disturbing things in regard to that attack on the consulate in Benghazi. Another thing that we're seeing happening is an intensified attack all the way through the media against the Koch brothers, and of course dragging the John Birch Society along with it, because the founder of the dynasty, Frederick Koch, was one of the founding members of the council of the John Birch Society. And so there's been dozens and dozens of broadcasts from NPR out into the local public stations attacking the Kochs and the John Birch Society at the same time. We're not sure which one they fear the most, but they don't like us in any regard. One thing, too, that is very refreshing to see is some of the things that we've talked about relative to fluoride over the years. You know, Rachel Maddow has always been, all those Birchers called the fluoridation of water a communist plot. Well, we didn't exactly say that. But it's come out now with a recent study that fluoride is a neurotoxin. And it may be good temporarily for your teeth, but for the rest of your body, not so sweet. Our objection to fluoride, to put it on the record, is this. We do not believe in the mass medication of our citizens by government, whether it's done by inoculation or with a water supply. That's simple. It should be a prerogative of the individual, not something that's mandated on them. And it's mandated if you drink water out of your local water system to get a medicine. That's not right. Just not right at all. Until next week, we'll see you then.